You bring a lot of unique perspectives as an immigrant entrepreneur. And what could other founders learn from those?
I think what's the commonality about immigrant entrepreneurs is incredible grit and determination to bring your idea to life. Immigrants come generally with very little money and just ideas. Some of the ideas build on their experiences being from other countries, seeing things that maybe people who are born in this country don't see. And then just determination to be successful, because immigrant founders most of the time don't have family that they can rely on for funding if something doesn't go right? So just working hard, not because you want to, because you have to. And I see this many other entrepreneurs who are immigrants just say, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to work however many hours, however many days it takes, because anything else would be just unacceptable.
Привет, Papinchka. Welcome to Founders and Empanadas.
Oh, great to be here.
Cheers. Excited to have you on.
Yeah. First time to try empanada. Let's see how it
All
tastes.
right. What do you think?
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got the last two empanadas from the panaderia this morning, but we made it work. So thank you for coming to visit me in Medellin. And today's episode will be all around the theme of immigrant entrepreneurs. And
I love coming here and love talking to you about entrepreneurship, as you know.
So very happy to have my dad on today. And he grew up in the Soviet Union and became a serial entrepreneur upon immigrating to the U.S. And I love it, just to kick it off, learning a little bit more, or sharing with the audience a little bit more about your journey through, starting in real estate, education, and how that eventually brought you to founding Azure Printed Homes.
Sure. Well, as you know, we left Soviet Union when I was 17. And we actually, while we were following legal immigration process, we became refugees because, unbeknown to us, as we were leaving on the train from former Soviet Union, the immigration guys took our passports and never returned them to us. So we left the country without any ID, which classified us as refugees. We're stateless for a number of years. And then after hanging around in Europe and Austria and Italy for about half a year, we made it to Los Angeles. Initially, from my first odd job was in the liquor store, where I got my name. My name in Ukraine was Gennady, but the owner of liquor store renamed me to Gene. First day I got the job. So working in the liquor store, doing some accounting work with my dad, getting ready I applied and was accepted to USC for undergrad. And then my brother one day came, and a friend of his was selling real estate. He thought this would be something that we could do. So in the period of a year, it was from not knowing any English. We came, our family of four, my parents, my brother, and I, we had $400 and speaking very little English. A year later, I got my real estate license. And because English was so poor, we could never sell residential real estate. So we started to focus on income properties because we needed to know the numbers, and we were pretty good at numbers. But the selling of real estate and other businesses I've been involved in, I was involved in education for almost 20 years. And now Azure Printed Homes. There is a common theme in all of these, was that kind of hard work and perseverance and grit can get you successful in whatever you do. It doesn't matter what your background is. In addition to all of those things, you really got to believe in what you're doing, because when we were starting to sell real estate initially, and then develop real estate, it was developing nicely designed units that we loved ourselves and our customers tend to love them. In education, it was, our program was designed for kind of very esoteric ideas, believing that kids from any background, kids from inner city, can get it if they have background, can have history. And then now with Azure Printed Homes, again, the initial idea was to find ways to build faster, less expensive, and was much more sustainable practices. What drove it was the fact that we need more affordable housing. We need, there are 75,000 homeless on the streets of Los Angeles. They need to find a home. We need to find places that people can enjoy and appreciate. And so the most important thing was every one of the businesses. It wasn't just purely profit motive. It was really designing something that would be good for others. And so that's kind of the common thread.
I love it. And my contributions to Azure were the name and the logo. I remember you wanted a 5-letter word that starts with an A. So I went to thesaurus.com and had at it. And then the closing of my Azure chapters, when you tasked me with driving this 6-foot-tall metal sign through the Topanga Canyon, and it flew off my truck, and if there was a car behind me, it would have impaled someone. So I'm out when that happened. But
when you called me and told me that you were on the Topanga Canyon and the sign just flew out and you were afraid it could have killed somebody, I knew as I was driving to rescue, I knew that's the end of your journey at Azure. But really, I mean, you wanted. I mean, really, at that time, you wanted to start a business, And I thought, well, that would be good. And of course, my experience in construction was that it takes always longer than anticipated. It almost always costs more than you anticipated. And all the trash and junk you generate during construction process, you're going to think that, wow, it seems like half of the material we just bought at Home Depot ends up in a trash can. So those were the 3 kind of principles we started. And again, your energy and your desire at a very young age to get something started with me was a lot of fun. So it's been, I often tell people, when people ask, what does Azure mean? I say, you need to ask my son. But yeah, it was great. And it was a great idea.
And the real origin of the name Azure is you first had blue water plumbing.
Right.
With the thick Russian accent. Blue water plumbing. So I'm adding a little class to it with Azure.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the lessons I learned at Azure, I very much still practice today at NeoWork, and I'm very thankful for that experience.
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey. I mean, we started Azure as a construction company with that mission of finding new ways to build. And then during COVID happened like 6 months later after we launched. ADUs became very popular in California. Those are homes in the backyards. And so that was our initial idea, is how can we build ADUs in someone's backyard without sending our workers to work in the backyard? Because construction is difficult enough, but when your customer during COVID sits at home and watches your guys work, and then in the evening checks quality of what they did, it really is just, wow, we got to do it in the factory. So, it took us first 2.5 years of, on one hand, building projects on site traditional way, and at the same time just thinking through how can we do it in the factory? How can we do it? We're using the latest technology. Both me and my co-founder, Ross, are from Europe. And so 3D printing started in Europe. First 3D printed house was, people moved in near Paris 9 years ago. So it's a very new industry. And we loved the idea of 3D printing, just didn't like printing with cement because it's terrible for CO2. It generates CO2, so we wanted to have something sustainable. And didn't want to print on site. Again, in Southern California, it'd be almost impractical to bring this huge equipment on small streets for a house. So the idea of doing it in the factory, the fact that in Scandinavia, in Japan, and Asia, so much more construction is done modular. In Japan, 50% of construction is done modular. In the United States, only 4%. So just some of these comparisons, you say, well, why is that? That doesn't make sense. There should be more done in the factory. But then also being able to pivot. I mean, we started with ADUs and backyard studios. And when the first prototype was built and we put it on the Facebook, one of the first customers was somebody who had a glamping resort. And the owner of that resort, together with his buddy, drove down to our factory on their Harleys. When they came in, I didn't know what glamping means. Like, you come from former Soviet Union, you try to stay in nice hotels. You're not thinking I'm going to come and stay in camping grounds, right? But a friend of mine heard of the name and said, glamping, that's the hottest trend. I never heard of it. But they had a vision. They saw our unit and had a vision of what kind of experience their customers can obtain. And so in 2024, over 50% of our units that we built were for glamping resort. So sometimes you pivot because you kind of figure out, that maybe your initial idea is not solid or can be adjusted. The beauty of Azure is that we kind of created some prototypes, and we have really a proof of real demand is having property owners come, and you see a sparkle in their eyes because they have a vision of something that we haven't even thought of, And so that's a real testament to when you create something that's special, where there is because in 3 previous businesses I built, I always had to build it and then convince somebody to buy it. This is the first experience where we created something, put an image up, and customers see it and want it. So that's something very unusual.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah.
How's the empanada coming along?
Very good. I just eat fast, so I needed to get either bigger one or more of them.
Yeah, there are only 2, so we did our best. So just taking a step back, Pops, what can, you bring a lot of unique perspectives as an immigrant entrepreneur, and what could other founders learn from those?
Sure. I think what's the commonality about immigrant entrepreneurs is incredible grit and determination to make something special or to bring your idea to life. Immigrants come generally with very little money and just ideas. Some of the ideas kind of build on their experiences being from other countries, seeing things that maybe people who are born in this country don't see. And then just determination to be successful, because immigrant founders most of the time don't have a family that they can rely on for funding if something doesn't go right? So just working hard, not because you want to, because you have to. It's like once you get it started, either you put whatever savings you have or whatever money you raise from investors, there is that just and I see this many other entrepreneurs who are immigrants. Just say, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to work however many hours, however many days it takes, because anything else would be just unacceptable, right? I think just, American dream is complicated. So people talk about how many immigrants come to America and are successful. There are also, millions of immigrants come to America and not successful, right? So to be successful, you really have to just dedicate yourself to doing something that is unique. A lot of innovation comes from that. I think even other investors or lenders, when they hear an idea from an immigrant, if they were to hear it from somebody who was born in America, they say, that doesn't make sense. But somebody, when they listen to you, they sometimes think that you might have some perspective that's unique. I mean, a good example, just this last weekend, I was in Atlanta and met with a company that wants to distribute our products. And as we were talking, 20, 30 minutes in conversation, they said, well, I'm sure you're bringing this great product. We're going to integrate it with other products we bring from Europe because you're Europeans. And it's like first time in a long time they thought, we're doing this because we're Europeans. So There are some advantages to that. I also, the tough part of American story is there are some people who are unaccepting of immigrants, or unaccepting of poor language, or unaccepting of things you talk about. And honestly, in my whole life, being here, I just have never accepted that I'm not accepted. It's, I'm also the kind of person, if somebody doesn't want to do business with me, I'm not going to be calling him 5 times. You basically present your idea. So maybe if I were to dig a little deeper, I would find out why they're not comfortable doing business with us. But the easiest way to live a life is give it all you got, get people excited. The ones who are will be your customers, investors. The ones who aren't, no reason to dwell your energy to figure it out. You just have to move on.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for other kind of, for women founders, minority founders. You cannot you cannot think of all the negative things why somebody doesn't want to do business with you, doesn't want to invest with you. You got to look at what you're being from kind of underrepresented background offers you opportunities. There are so many grants and funders who are funding now women and minority started businesses. Go for them. There are so many opportunities develop products for women and minorities that a white guy will not think of. So I really think it's kind of doing a itemization of your strengths, not to worry about too much about your weaknesses, and just emphasizing what you're good at and what your unique experience is.
Totally. Any other stories you can share of unique challenges that you faced as an immigrant entrepreneur? From a cultural or language perspective?
What kind of language?
What are you thinking about?
What's wrong with mine? Yeah. Culturally, it was, this was good. Culturally, it was hard in the beginning because I could actually see it a lot more in my dad because he was in his 50s when he came. I was still a teenager. But I remember when my brother and I, here we are in this country for 2 years, we're going to the bank to borrow $500,000 to build our first condominium project. And the banker said, "You could lose your shirt." And I looked at my brother and said, "If that's all we have to lose, that's nothing." So just not getting that, little things that and the list goes on and on. And it's just sometimes not understanding what people tell you is not a bad thing. Language-wise and culturally-wise, the toughest part is, I've had it at the very beginning, I still have it, is when you hire employees, you think that they'll work as hard as you are. And the reality is, and some of them do, but majority of them don't. So kind of culturally, you think, I build this company, or I'm building this company because of the effort I put in. If somebody comes in, either executive level or just at any level, they get excited about the opportunity we have, but they can't think that it's going to come easy, And so when they tell me, I got up early and left, I probably got up 2 hours before they did, and came back home 2 hours after they did. So it's still culturally, even till today, it's hard to understand why somebody who is offered opportunity with us wouldn't put the hours, wouldn't go in their off hours to networking sessions, to meet other people, wouldn't get involved in community events or political events that could help the business. That is the hardest part. I just can't imagine that if somebody is excited that they think that they can accomplish, in 8-9 hours a day, what takes founders, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. So just, I'm sure you see it in your business. I mean, how do you, what's your experience been with hiring, and what has been some of the challenges and the disappointments? I'd love to know that.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in incentive-based pay. So for as many roles as possible, even entry-level support roles. We'll do monthly competitions with bonuses for top performers. But giving them that sense of ownership and that going the extra mile does result in more financial gain for them has been key for me. And then also just a lot of it comes from the screening and recruitment phase of finding someone that goes a little bit above and beyond what we ask in like a paid project or shows that extra initiative. Right?
The question is, why is just a little? Why do you? It's like, I agree. Incentives, but why not expect a lot more? And why not expect something that? I mean, very rarely does somebody just wow me that they learn of a contact or not that doesn't come from our leads. Yeah, we generate leads, but it's like going to a community event, believing in what you're doing, be it affordable housing for the homeless. There's so many opportunities, to learn more, to meet other people. Why don't people do that? It's just like, what the hell do you do in the other, however many hours you spend outside of work? And the reality is, it's not like work. It's like, if you really believe in it, you will enjoy it because it's a mission driven.
Yeah.
Right. And it's very hard to find people who would do that.
For me, I over-index on people that are making a new career shift or are starting in a new field because they have that extra energy to prove themselves. And I found that the hires that haven't worked out have usually been the ones that are, more senior industry experts, have been working at BPOs forever, and they just get comfortable in the space that they're in. Yeah. So I think also just like that sense of need to prove themselves and that urgency is a driver.
Yeah.
Very cool. Pops, I'd love to learn a little bit more, or not learn. What is your name? I'd love for you to share with our founders that are listening in a little bit more about how your experiences from real estate and education paved the way to building Azure and what kind of unique pain point you were solving for.
Sure. I find that for Azure Printed Homes, it's like culmination of my career. And if I wouldn't do what I did in the past, we wouldn't be this successful. So here's some examples. In education, we developed preschools initially and then charter schools. It was highly political. Basically, teacher unions were against charter schools. School boards were against charter schools. And we had to develop a unique political skill to get the approvals. And also, the politics was on both edges. Like when we were developing schools in inner city, it was Democrats who supported our movement because they wanted to improve schools in their areas. When we were in rural areas, suburban areas, it was Republicans who wanted to see choices for kids. So it really taught me how to understand the politics where people come from, and just be comfortable talking to any audience. And so in housing, a lot of it, some of it is the same. It's while our politics is now very divided, kind of crafting different messages, be it when you craft a message for housing the homeless, or when you craft a message for doing affordable housing, or craft a message about sustainability. I mean, we use recycled plastic and fiberglass to make our homes. So figuring out how to present what we have in such a way that it'll be most politically and culturally acceptable. Also, in terms of education, I just love offering opportunities to people. As I said, our charter schools were primarily for urban communities. Now, offering opportunities in 3D printing and in construction, people don't need to have a master's degree to operate a 3D printer. So ability to offer higher paying, high quality jobs to the guys who are working, in 100-degree weather, hammering nails all day long, now to use their skills in something that's really seen as a future of construction. is very self-fulfilling. So just opportunities we offer to our employees are incredible. What I learned from construction, our first ventures were in construction, was just how, look, 100 years ago, automotive industry was a horse and a buggy, right? Today, people drive EV vehicles. 100 years ago, there was somebody hammering nails to build a house. Today, they're still hammering nails to make a house. So construction just had the least amount of innovation of almost any industry. It's not only changing the way things are done, but changing consumer expectations. Consumer has an expectation that he can go on the website and pick options in the Tesla car and come and pick it up next week. And when they start ordering the house, they have expectation that they're going to have 3 meetings with a general contractor, and hopefully in 18 months they'll have a house. I mean, it's just I tell people, look, you can order one of Azure structures today and move in next month, and people just in awe. I mean, it's just totally, it's unheard of. But why? Why isn't it we have expectation we can now order, anything on Amazon, get it the next day, but preferably the same day, right? But with housing, it's still expectations going months or years away. So really, it kind of build on, but also today's business is incredibly complex in the way that things change so fast, right? Who heard of AI 2 years ago? Now AI is the most overused word in the English language. It's like, so again, just pivoting over all these years, pivoting our life, initially coming to America, and then pivoting businesses, teaches you how to be much more flexible because just things are going to continue to change rapidly, even at a faster speed than they have in the last few years.
I love that. Pops, how did starting with limited resources when you first moved to the U.S. Impact just how you see business opportunities and how you do resource allocation with your companies?
Yeah. So starting with limited resources teaches you how to move a little bit slower than a lot of entrepreneurs want to move, right? Because you kind of can't expect that there's going to be money, very near in the future from venture fund or something like that. You got to count on what you have. My brother and I had help from several other immigrants who became our partners and kind of trusted us and shared with us their resources. But all along, I always it feels much more comfortable to build a business that does not lose a lot of money, that doesn't have a long way to profitability. So I'd rather kind of move slower so that you can kind of count on what you have. And then what happens, things kind of accelerate almost naturally. You have to be ready for acceleration. You have to hire people who are better than you so that they can maybe bring some different experiences. But really allow the idea to mature, or to kind of allow the business to figure out what is going to be your niche before you just go into hyper growth.
And Pops, what aspects of my entrepreneurial journey surprised you compared to your story?
I'm just so tickled to see you build your businesses. So on one hand, I feel that both my brother and I gone through a lot of kind of difficulties. Maybe we didn't do many things the right way, but I feel that we built foundation for our kids, to build their life it was this deep experience, right? So that was probably the most self-fulfilling thing. But in terms of both you and your brothers and my niece and nephew are all very successful people because they have a combination of being born in this country and being smart, getting good education, and at the same time have this blend of sitting around the kitchen table and hearing all the horror stories of bad hires and challenges and problems. So many people often ask me, how can a 31-year-old live in Colombia, run businesses all over the world? And I'm just like shocked that they asked that. It's like when Joshua was small, he traveled with me to 5 continents. So, I can land in any country in the world and 2 days later totally be comfortable. And I think he gained that from me, right? But at the same time, and I'm sure my brother will say that what you and Steven, all the kids accomplish is so much more than we are at the same age. You're just so much more sophisticated. You have access to resources. So you're really gaining kind of the best of both worlds, right? Seeing kind of what your parents, and I saw your episode with Steven where you guys are kind of a little bit laughing at what we did. I'm sure there's a lot to laugh about, but you didn't necessarily live through those experiences, but you got the benefit of it, right? So now that you're growing your companies, you have just an unbelievable foundation to be able to do things faster than it took us to get to where we are.
But a lot of the same themes of just grit and figuring stuff out. And you raised a good point. Yeah, I definitely credit the early business trips with you to going to the Philippines and figuring out the right people to hire and who to talk to. So,
and I think it's just just knowing that regardless of where you are in the world or in the country, people are people, right? Yeah. So ability to relate to somebody and try to understand where they come from is so key, right? And that's hard, that you don't learn it in college, right? That comes from just being around. How many times you and your brother's been embarrassed by what I say or what I do when we're in unusual circumstances? But then, it's a lot of it's for humor, just smiling, not necessarily speaking the language, but just figuring out how to get along with people. I think hopefully that's what you've gained that kind of got you to be successful.
Oh yeah, there's no shame. One of my favorite dad stories is you going up to people with tattoos. Oh, I like your logos. Okay.
Sometimes you don't have to be politically correct, just funny.
There you go. I think you raised a good point earlier about, back when you were with your education company, needing to be able to talk to both Democrats and Republicans and that kind of need to be a chameleon depending on the audience. And I think that even expands further to different cultures, doing international business, being able to find relatability with anyone in the world.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's chameleon. What's really important for a business is to have a soul, or for a business person, right? You need to know what's right. And that's something very hard to learn. So, chameleons change color just based on circumstances. When you're in business or when you are successful, you need to know what's right. There is so much focus right now on a lot of these relationships that are built now are very transactional. In transactional relationships, you really don't have a soul. You do what's right for that deal, right? I find that you need to kind of know what is the right thing to do. Once you know what the right thing to do, then adjusting to circumstances is how you become successful. Yeah, it's like the right thing to do is solving homeless problem, right? So somebody who is liberal is just your heart aches when you drive by people who are on the street. Somebody who's conservative who thinks that all of the people who are homeless are drug addicts, just not right. Because I have some homeless people living right on the street where I live. And I sometimes talk with them, develop a little bit of relationship with them. They're not drug addicts. They just can't afford rent, And the longer they're going to be on the street, there's going to be exposure to drugs and alcohol. So it's not, again, I just, and I don't know, I think this right thing to do comes from your family and from and who your friends are. And at the same time, just being, trying to understand where other people come from. And also sometimes you just don't know. Sometimes you just listen and learn and be able to not necessarily convince them, but just understand their perspective and see how you can offer a solution or you can give advice. But there is a danger of just everything being transactional. And you and I talked about it, how so many people, want to do something, offer to even do something for you, and immediately, the same moment, they want to know what you're going to do for them. And that just doesn't feel right? Much more comfortable when you meet somebody to find out what you can do for them, right? Pay forward. Figure out, some of it, most of it is not money. Most of it is time. Can I provide an introduction? Can I listen to your idea? Can I be honest about your idea? So many people, so many entrepreneurs have this business ideas. First of all, you have 1 minute to pitch the idea, and then you have 5 judges who pull it apart. You cannot learn through about an idea in 1 minute or 3 minutes. So just giving somebody more time to understand their idea, how they developed it, and then give them honest feedback, not positive. Again, I see this in startup competitions. Everybody wants to try to give positive feedback. Then they ask questions, and then at the end they vote. You don't even know why they didn't vote for you, right? So much more positive, just to figure out how can they help. Later on, that person might be able to help you. And if they do, great. And if they don't, you have no expectations. So, the negative is very minimal. The positive is tremendous. And I've seen that happen many, many times. So that's kind of my feeling, is just be genuine. Time is the most precious thing entrepreneurs have. And time is the most precious thing you can give somebody, another entrepreneur, of just listening to what they have, giving them honest feedback. Not to be shy about, entrepreneurs have to have a thick skin. I've been turned out by over 100 venture funds. Okay, Actually, this reminds me. So one of my first jobs in real estate was selling real estate, and I was in this large commercial real estate office in San Fernando Valley. And there it was one evening. The office had probably 20 desks. My manager was there, and I was there. Nobody else was there, because what he told us just in a sales meeting the day before is that you have to make 100 cold calls. And if you make 100 cold calls beginning tomorrow, you will find your customer. And there we were, a day later, everybody else was gone. I was there. Just questioning, I said, were you serious? Do I really need to make 100 phone calls? He said, Gene, all those guys right now, they're having dinner with their girlfriends or wives. They listened to me yesterday. They thought it was just my sales pitch. You watch. You make 100 phone calls. You will get a client. And so there I was. Started first call. Was my accent was really bad that time. People would tell me to go, where, just call me the names. And he could see me getting a little bit disparaged. He said, how many calls you made? I said, I already made 9 calls. Just people either hang up or... He said, now your chances at the beginning of this evening were 1 out of 100. Now your chance improved. It's 1 out of 91. And I kept dialing. And by the end of the week, on the call 36, I got my first client. I made $8,500. And then that client, I sold him 3 more properties, and he became our partner in the real estate business. Oh. So this... I tell this story often because it still works. You can, it was I said in the beginning, you can wait for the leads and then respond to them. Yeah, that's wonderful. But you got to allocate part of your time figuring out where the leads might be, because the more outreaches you make, the higher your probability of making a sale. Worked 30 plus years ago, still works today. And if you have an attitude where, you had another rejection, you're not going to get to number 100. And if your attitude is every time actually he told me, look, a quick no is better than long no. When somebody said, "Oh, call me later," that's not good. Just try to force them to the yes or no, because a quick no, you'll just improve your chances. Them telling you call you back, your chances are still the same because they didn't reject you. So that's I always keep it in my mind, and it's worked my whole life.
Yep, it's a numbers game.
Right.
Awesome. Pops, last question for you. What's one strongly held belief that you have that 99% of other founders would disagree with?
Yeah, so it's a little bit what I talked about. I think all the startup accelerators and innovation hubs are teaching how go deep and narrow and prepare for huge growth, right? I say go slow in the beginning. And while you want to find that niche, that deep and narrow, be prepared to pivot. What happens if you really just think that this is your idea and even proven that it's successful and start going into high growth, things change so fast that you could even be very successful, raise lots of money and start growing. And what will change totally will not prepare you for something different. So my suggestion is to kind of slow down a little bit. And while you want to find your one product, think constantly, what's going to be the pivot? So when we started Azure Construction, we had 2, 3, 4 projects. But what it allowed us to do is actually allowed us to generate revenue. So 2.5 years later, we incorporated Azure Printed Homes. First of all, they said, well, how long have you been in business? Well, we've been in business for 2.5 years, right? So you don't feel, there are so many people who will not deal with you if you're just like brand new, right? So we're not brand new, right? Then, where did you get the money to do R&D? Well, we made money from our initial projects to do initial R&D plus our own investment. Even when we started growing, we needed to make changes to equipment. We invented some equipment. We're on the 4th material. Here we're still a very young company. Azure Printed Homes was started in March of 22. We're on the 4th product, and now we're about to launch our 5th material. Because when you go slow and you don't put a lot of product out there with material that's maybe not the best, it gives you opportunity to change. I feel now, 2025 is going to be our most successful year. But again, the 3rd year of Azure Printed Homes, it's the 5th year of us thinking about it. We finally our technology works, our material works. We have now several markets. Again, we started with just ADU being narrow, but we found at an upper end, it's glamping resorts. The customer who came, that first customer who drove down on his Harley, he bought a unit that retails for $40,000. He took every upgrade. He wanted solar because it doesn't have electricity. He wanted to have real high-end finishes on bathroom and kitchens. So he paid a little bit over $60,000. He rents that unit for $750 a night. He got his money back in less than 120 days, right? So that's a luxury product. But one of the most exciting announcements we're going to make just early 25, we're going to build first village for the homeless for 60 people in a partnership with a not-for-profit. It's an interim solution. It costs 1/20th of what it costs to build permanent housing for the homeless. It's going to be beautifully done. The units are going to be small, but people who will call it home will be proud to tell their family and friends that that's their home. So that's my advice, is just be prepared for growth, but don't try to grow in a very narrow market from the beginning, because things are just changing so rapidly that maybe when they didn't change rapidly, that worked, right? But now you need to think about it.
Yep.
You want to ask me about my book?
Yeah. What's a book that you are reading that you recommend?
Yeah, I was a little bit upset. You ask everybody else about reading the book, or you never see me reading books. Yeah, so the book that I really love was the first book that I read when I came to this country. And it's by Milton Friedman. It's called Free to Choose. So lots of people want to say, what's the latest book? What's the latest thing? So here's a book that's been published, I think it was published in the 70s. Milton Friedman, I had the fortune of meeting him before he passed. He is all of 5 feet tall, 5'0", And he co-wrote the book with his wife, who was 410. He was he got Nobel laureate for economics at the University of Chicago. And Free to Choose talks about, on one hand, just resentment to government interference, which is kind of, I embrace it coming from former Soviet Union. But talked about a couple other important things that founders can learn from. First of all, the importance of competition. He advocated for school vouchers back, but it was just an idea in charter schools. But the importance of competition, I always believe that when people say, well, who's your competition? I said, I want to have more competitors in my business because more competition will make you stronger. Going next to other factory that makes homes and our factory, that'll be better because customer can come and choose. And hopefully they'll choose us. But if they choose our competitor, we will learn something from that. And finally, he was a huge believer in long-term strategy. Again, what we see now, not only people want to only give you 1 minute to make your pitch, they also want to hear just one, people are not even interested in 5-year plans. I mean, it was an acceptable, it used to be that when you apply for funding, you had to give a 5-year plan. Now VCs say, I don't want to know about your 5-year projections, right? They just say, I just love the idea. I believe there is a strength in long-term planning. Yeah, the Soviet Union have proven that 5-year plans are totally useless, right? So I'm not advocating for having a 5-year plan and sticking with it, but you got to have a long-term plan, and that's Free to Choose very much talked about. A lot of the policy changes that he was advocating was about thinking long-term. So when you think long-term, it might not work out, but at least you have thought about it. And if you think about it, that again gives you opportunity to pivot later. It's not going to be, this doesn't work, I'm going to just jump on something else. When you think of a long-term plan, you kind of lay out some of the things that might work. And it's very possible that if your main idea doesn't work or doesn't work as successfully, then you go to the next idea that was in that 5-year plan. So it's an old book. It's withstood the time. I have a copy signed by both Milton Friedman and his wife. I encourage founders to read back to something that withstood the test of time.
Yep. Love it. Awesome, Pops. Where can people find out about you and Azure Printed Homes online?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Gene Eidelman, and our website is the best place, AzurePrintedHomes.com. We have a configurator there where you can, in half an hour, can select your home and pick all the options and move in next month.
There you go. Thanks so much for coming on. Cheers.
It was great. Thank you.